inside a factory farm is like being in a war zone. It's violent, it's loud, it's chaotic, it's blood, it's dead bodies. I saw starvation a lot. I have nightmares still to this day about what I saw.
For most undercover investigations, they're what are called employment-based undercover investigations, which means putting in an employment application the same way any other employee would, and if they get selected and get offered the job, they perform the same duties as any other employee, but they wear a small hidden camera. And in the course of doing their job, record what they see, and more often than not, it's horrific treatment of animals.
When Mercy for Animals released what we had found, corporations such as Costco, Hy-Vee, Kroger, Safeway, Albertsons, they immediately did the right thing and dropped Iowa Select as a supplier. Consumers were also outraged. The industries pushed back hard.
Ag laws are laws that criminalize undercover investigations at factory farms and slaughterhouses. This is the industry's attempt to silence the animal rights movement. Over the last 20 years or so, there have been more than 100 investigations, and every single one of them has revealed horrific cruelty to animals. And rather than reform those practices, the response of the industries that produce these products has been to kill the messenger by passing laws that make it a crime to expose the horrors of factory farming.
Please repeat after me. I, Kimberly K. Reynolds.
I, Kimberly K. Reynolds.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
These ag laws are a major priority of the ag industry. Factory farm lobbyists have pushed these bills in states across the country. Just as how Wall Street has incredible sway in New York, or how the oil industry has used its industrial base in Texas to buy a lot of votes. Big ag, factory farming, has a lot of political power in states like Iowa. We filed a public records request to obtain email correspondence between the governor's office and Iowa Select, as well as their lobbyists and the family that owns Iowa Select. What we found were email correspondence that showed weekly meetings, phone calls. Governor Reynolds even served as the guest of honor at the family foundation run by the owners of Iowa Select. Deborah Hansen, the owner of Iowa Select, was the largest individual campaign donor to Kim Reynolds. In January, Iowa's ag law was struck down by a federal court, but the Iowa legislature moved quickly. Within 2 months, the bill was revised and then passed into law. Within weeks of being sworn into office, Kim Reynolds signed this new ag legislation.
It's been about 8 years since I've been back. My role at Iowa Select was to work in the farrowing department. That's where sows that have been held in gestation crates go to give birth, and that's where piglets are born. In the mornings, the first order of business is to push the piglets that are aged out onto transport trucks to go to their grow-out facilities, essentially creating a stampede in the hallways. And then we start our rounds seeing which sows gave birth overnight, whether sows have died. And then after that, we take piglets who are 2 to 3 days old and we remove their tails with shears, essentially, and then we move on to castrations. This is done without anesthesia. It's a very brutal process. My home base for the 3 months that I worked at Iowa Select was a Super 8 motel in Story City, Iowa. It's lonely. You're away from your family. Oftentimes, nobody, even the people you're close to, can know what you're doing. It's thankless. I would go on these massive runs up up and down these highways in Iowa just to wear myself out enough to be able to sleep at night. Every day when I got home, I would collect that footage and catalog it and contextualize it, logging every piece of footage for what would eventually be a release to media and corporations. You have to become numb to the things you're experiencing. It has to be normal in some way, or you'll go insane.
There's been a sharp increase in the number of people who care about where their food comes from, who are awakening to the ethical arguments against factory farming. And the fact that the industry has responded with ag-gag laws instead of changing practices is quite telling, and I think leads a lot of people to ask what it is that the industry has to hide.
Instead of taking the opportunity to really look inward as an industry and see where is our model failing and why? Why are consumers turning away from us in droves? What is our responsibility here? The industries are not asking themselves those questions. They're saying, what do we have to do? What lies do we have to tell? And whom do we have to pay to continue business as usual?
This is an incredibly salient example of the pervasive influence of money in politics. I don't think voters were clamoring for a new law to restrict undercover reporting at factory farms, but why is it a priority for lawmakers once they get into office? Lobbyists have a lot of influence, and campaign donations, they open a lot of doors. Well-connected, powerful industries can bend public policy based on their interest rather than the public interest.
Sometimes they're still alive. Those ones are not. It's absurd to think that workers are coming to their jobs every day with the goal of abusing animals. We receive cruelty complaints from regular workers all the time. These are not vegetarians. They're not people with agendas. They're people who say, this is wrong, and I don't know whom else to call. Workers often are so unprotected, especially if they're undocumented. You get a job in the industry that is available to you, and you come to work, and the culture is, this is our production schedule. And if we do not meet our quotas, we lose money. There is no regulatory body that is picking up the slack. Not just animal cruelty, salmonella, waste spillage, environmental degradation. There's no decision that gets made for the welfare of the animal at the expense of the company. What matters is that they make it to the line and they make their money.